Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Pocket the Key. I used to be the overnight cashier at a large grocery chain that was open 24 hours. I worked 5 nights a week with the weekends off. The cigarettes were kept behind the service desk, which had a locked half door that had to be unlocked in order to access the area. The key to unlock the door was on a regular keyring, and I would keep it in my pocket all night, because I had to get cigarettes for customers. In the mornings, I would drop the keyring off in the office, and it would be waiting for me when I came back into work the next night. There was another cashier who worked the 2 overnights during the weekend. He developed a habit of taking the keyring home with him. I would end up having to jump over the counter to get into the area, and the daytime employees were pretty annoyed with having to leave the door unlocked all day. After the weekend cashier did this for a month straight, a manager ended up putting the key on one of those large sticks that are often used in gas stations for restroom keys. I felt like a fool having to carry around a big restroom key stick when I was not the one who couldn't remember to leave the regular keyring in the office when I got off work every day. I asked my manager why I had to suffer the punishment of another employee's incompetence, and the manager just explained how we have to make sure the key doesn't accidentally get misplaced or taken home again, and the giant stick is a way to accomplish that. That night I purchased a large padlock. I used the padlock to lock the key stick to the front of a shopping cart. I then made large signs on poster board that said "key card" and put it on both sides of the cart. To open the door, the whole cart had to be rolled up to the door, close enough to get the key into the keyhole. It was a bit of a spectacle and a pain to do. The next night, when I came into work, my manager was pretty irritated about the key card. I told him I was just being proactive and that someone could still take the key home, even on the stick, but no one would be able to take the key home if it's attached to an entire card. It stayed like that for another day, and then it was back to its original keyring that I could put in my pocket. The next story is called Learns to Listen. I worked for a guy, Frank, who built and adjusted cubicles, among other things, for a manufacturing company. He was a contractor, but he'd worked with them for about 40 years, so he knew the company better than many of the employees. He told me a story of a big-headed manager who got put in charge of sales. This guy decided that he wanted to be able to step out of his office and see all his people working. Whether it was a power trip or he honestly thought it would help, I don't know. Frank told him it wasn't a good idea, but he insisted. So Frank goes through the entire floor and shortens all the cubicles to waist height. He had to cut the frames down, since they didn't have enough of the right size. This only lasted a week or 2 before the manager realized his mistake. Something about removing the sound barriers between people who spend a good portion of their day on the phone had a negative effect on productivity and morale. Crazy, right? The manager comes back to Frank and asks him to put everything back the way it was. But as Frank had to cut the frames the first time, and you can't just weld them back together. Frank told me this story as we were adjusting someone's desk on that floor. I still don't know how exactly he got them all together, but that manager learned his lesson and actually listened to his people after that. The third story is called Stocking Parts. Years ago, I did a stint as a service manager for a large equipment rental company with all green equipment. It was a new store, and they had been operating for 6 months with just the store manager, his girlfriend, the salesperson, rental manager, and one lone mechanic. When I started, the place was on fire. They had so many service calls every day that the mechanic was getting nothing done in the shop. Equipment was not properly checked in and inspected. Annual inspections on high-reach equipment were not getting done, and the only parts we had were a few oil and air filters. In a matter of days, I figured out that the mechanic would go on a service call, and if it was a quick fix, he would go to sleep somewhere. So I fired him and hired someone who would do what was needed. I slowly started building an inventory of parts that were known to fail. In 6 months, I had a pretty decent supply of parts on hand. It wasn't often we had to order something to get a machine ready to rent. One sunny afternoon, I was doing paperwork in my office, and in storms the store manager. He was upset because our inventory of parts meant we took a hit on our quarterly bonus. He ordered me to only order parts as we needed them. I asked how we were supposed to keep machinery running in a timely manner. His response? Next day air. I told him to put that in an email, and I would gladly comply. He stormed out, and 5 minutes later, I had a detailed email explaining how we would next day air all parts. All parts. This is important, because all our filters and batteries were bought locally. In a matter of a week or so, I was running low on parts, so I ordered everything from the factory. A filter that was $5 local was $15 from the factory, plus freight. And I wasn't just making one order per day. As soon as one of the mechanics, we were up to 3, we were growing like crazy, gave me a parts list, I called in the order. And sometimes I called in 10 orders per day. This lasted 3 months. The next thing I know is that I get called into a meeting with the store manager, the regional manager, the head of purchasing from corporate, and the company president. I had an idea what it was about, so I printed out that email. It seems they were a little upset that in 3 months I had managed to rack up over $25,000 in next day air freight. They asked the store manager why I didn't have any parts. He immediately threw me under the bus, saying that he had been telling me for months to build up our parts. The regional manager looks at me and says maybe I'm not cut out for management. I told him I was just following instructions and handed him the email. He looked at it and told me to go back to work. I couldn't make out what was being said, but there were a lot of raised voices coming from the office. After the shouting ended, the regional manager came to my office and said he would take over until they hired a new manager. He also told me to get my parts inventory in order and don't sweat the cost. The last story is called You Have Enough. My husband works for a smallish company that makes medical equipment in the production department. There are multiple teams in the production department, divided by product type produced. Each team has a supervisor, and the entire production department is overseen by the production manager. One day, hubby and his co-workers are building a particular product and realize they don't have enough clamps. Hubby goes to the head purchaser and tells him, "We are running low on clamps. Please order some." The head purchaser checks the database and goes, "According to the database, you have 1,000 clamps though." "No, we don't. We looked everywhere. There are none." "Then look again. You probably didn't see them." And with that, he dismissed hubby from his office. Hubby and his supervisor looked everywhere, but there were none, though the other team had 200 clamps as emergency stock. It felt like either the warehouse screwed up or the numbers in the database were incorrect. Hubby then wrote an email to the head purchaser, CCing his supervisor, the production manager, and the CEO, that the production urgently needs clamps and to please order them. He didn't mention the emergency stock of the other team. The head purchaser was angry about the email, stomped into the production hall, beelining towards hubby, and said something to the effect of, "How could you humiliate me like that? I show you what it's like to be really humiliated." He then looked for the clamps himself, found the emergency stock of the other team, and told him, "See, there are the clamps. Just use these and resume the production." The head purchaser then retracted to his office to write an email to hubby, CCing the same people as Hubby, included a screenshot of the database page for clams, and stated basically what he told Hubby about there being clams, but more politely. Hubby saw the email, and when heading to the other team's hall to get the clams to resume production for the time being, stopped by the CEO's office to merely explain the situation to him and point out that the numbers in the database were wrong, using the very screenshot the head purchaser sent as an example. CEO tore the head purchaser a new one for not ordering the clams immediately. The guy responsible for keeping the numbers of the database up to date happened to be on vacation at the time, but got reamed by the CEO as well when he returned. The cherry on top, the CEO gave Hubby's supervisor permission to directly contact the supplier and establish a routine for regular deliveries. The head purchaser was hopping mad about it, but Hubby just told him that they had the CEO's permission to do that, and he couldn't do anything about it. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.